Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Nora Brown. Todd and my grandpa Wes are taking a break, so I'm taking control. So I want to play one of my favorite episodes, Leo Tanguma. Leo is a muralist that they interviewed in January of 2020. Leo starts the conversation talking about his childhood and the path he took to become a world-class artist. Now, Leo Tanguma.
I'd like to tell you about my growing up in Texas. We were mainly farm workers in the Mexican-American community, especially my family and others in our neighborhood or our barrio. We lived in Beeville, Texas, which was a small town but very agricultural. But there was hardly any contact between between Mexican-Americans and Anglo-Americans. The experience that some of us had, the young kids, was in our schools, right? Where these were separate, all Mexican schools, right?
It was all segregated,
right? And so the teachers were all mainly elderly teachers, and they seemed to me to be unhappy about being there. In any case, the other contact we had, and people, especially young people in our community had, was with the police, especially with our sheriff, Mr. Vale Ennis, who killed, I believe, during his tenure as chief there, 13 Mexican Americans. And I'm afraid that, or I think one of those, or two of those, or Anglo sailors that used to be in a station in a naval station nearby called Chase Field. So there's like 11 Mexican Americans and 2 Anglo Americans that were killed by this awful sheriff. So you can imagine that the adult population had these awful feelings towards the sheriff, right? We could do nothing about it, despite protests by members of our community and lawsuits against the sheriff and the sheriff's department. Nothing ever changed, right? So as kids, we would hear our parents talk about El Cherife, El Cherife this, El Cherife that. One weekend he might have killed somebody or beaten somebody because he beat a lot of people up, aside from the ones that he killed, right? So you can imagine little kids, let's say like me in the 5th grade, in the community we could hear our parents talk about El Cherife this, or mató al joven, or, he killed some youth. So we had all these things that we heard about. We didn't quite understand, but we knew that sometimes, like in my mother's case, in my family's case, Sheriff Ennis shot and killed my mother's cousin. Not only that, but 2 other young men that were with my mother's cousin. So we had some kind of contact. A lot of people did in the neighborhood knew somebody or were relatives to somebody that had been killed or beaten up by the police. So one day in our classroom, we didn't have a teacher. My wife wants to show you this.
So, yeah, it's a picture of a young child erasing something off the chalkboard, right, and a teacher hitting him with a ruler, it looks like.
Well, getting back, so that day we didn't have a teacher, at least not in the morning, so that we were advised that there would be a teacher later. But right now, everybody stay in your desks and just be quiet, right? At some point, the kids began to go to the blackboard or throw wads of paper or just play around, right? And I decided to go to the blackboard, right? So I went to the blackboard, and before I could draw anything, somebody called to me from the kids behind me. I think it was a boy that said, "Polo, draw me killing the sheriff."
And Polo was the name they called you. That was your nickname?
Right, in those days, Leopoldo. Polo is short for that. Actually, it was in elementary school that a teacher changed my name from Polo to Leo.
Ah.
In any case, somebody called to me from the classroom, "Polo, draw me killing the sheriff." So I drew two images that I remember, and I drew them large, and I don't know why I did that. A lot of the times that we drew on the blackboard was little pictures, right? we weren't used to drawing big, as if there was something innate in us that made us control ourselves. But that day I drew 2 large figures of the sheriff. And these are kind of hard memories sometimes to remember. But I remember that I put a big star on one of those figures. And one of the figures was laying down on the ground. And he also had a cowboy hat, I think, and a star. In any case, or a badge, right? In any case, some of the kids, and I had drawn some little figures of kids plunging their knives into the sheriff, right? So the kids in the classroom began to say, that's me, right? And they would draw their names over that figure that's plunging the knife.
Right.
That's me, like Alberto or Juan, whatever it is. So there were a bunch of little names around the sheriffs, around those kids that were killing the sheriff. So I was still drawing when this teacher walked in, and I'm real proud to tell you that she understood what I was saying, because it was so clear. I think even though a little boy had done it, it was clear what the message was that we had to say, that people in the community hated the sheriff, right, with good reason.
Right.
And that sheriff deserved to be killed by somebody. But in any case, she told me to erase this junk right now, now, something like that. And she went and got a ruler. I was worried about it. I thought she was going to slap me or something, but thankfully she got a ruler. So I'm still erasing when she comes back, and just started to hit me on the back. And so when I thought I was done, I ran back to my seat, but she told me, come back here, you're not done yet. So I erased some more, and she hit me again. I don't know how many times, man, but 3 or 4 times at least. So in any case, when I was erasing, I couldn't see what I was doing because I had tears in my eyes.
Right.
I could not see what in the world I was doing, and she's saying things to me still. And so when I finished, I wasn't sure if she was going to tell me I wasn't done yet, but I just stood facing the blackboard, crying. In any case, that was my calling, I think. The little boy, that voice calling. And so years later, I didn't realize it at first, of course, but years later I began to think, well, that kid represented the community, right? And I wish more people... Actually, 2 Chicanos went and shot that sheriff to pieces, and he survived.
Really?
Really?
Oh, my God.
They shot him. 2 Chicanos. I'm so proud of those kids.
It actually came back to him, but yet...
Yeah, he survived and killed both of them.
Oh, wow.
That sheriff was some tough guy. But anyway, I'm sorry they didn't kill him. In any case, we continued our work and our lives in there. My family was very religious, so I was real religious also, I think, And that went on for years until I began to get more radicalized and less attentive to religious ideas, even though I tried to live a Christian life. In any case, so we finally moved to, my sister and I moved to Pasadena, Texas, outside of Houston. And that area of Houston is filled with petrochemical industry and refineries. And just in any case, the labor is paid very well in those areas with the petrochemical industry, right? So, but at first I was too young for that, right? I was 14 when we moved to Houston or to Pasadena. But I worked about 8 months as a dishwasher. I didn't know there was anything better, I mean, I just worked and worked. And then I finally began to get tired, and I got another job as a custodian at 14. Right? People needed cheap labor. But I even got tired of that. And I had heard some people talk about, if you join the Army, you can stay in the Army or the Marine Corps 20 years, and you can retire and get paid for the rest of your life. Can you imagine? I thought, wow, that sounds like a good idea. So I went and falsified my birth certificate, and I joined the Marines.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
What year did you join?
That was 1957.
1957? My dad was enlisted in the Marines in 1961.
Really?
Or no, 1960. And I enlisted in it in 1980. So 20 years later, I was in the Marine Corps as
Really?
well. I spent 10 years in. I didn't get the big payoff at the end.
Yeah.
I left too soon. My dad did only 4 years, but
Really? Well, that was a regular term, right?
Right.
4 years?
Yeah. So that's interesting. I didn't know that about you.
In any case, what happened is that I think the Marine Corps had a sweep trying to look for young kids because they caught me, right, in the cemetery, the separation unit. And there were like 12 or 15 other kids, the majority being Chicanos, all 15 or 16-year-old kids. Wow. Later on, I thought, how come they had so many at the same time, right? You'd imagine one kid might have been taken from that unit, some from another, but these were all Mexicano kids or Mexican-American kids. So anyway, I got out of there in July of 57. And I came back to Pasadena, and I got like regular jobs. I had a little job driving a produce truck, and I was only 15, man. Those folks just hired. In those days, they were not checking as much. In any case, so I worked at those kind of jobs. And when I became 17, I joined the Army, and I served 3.5 years. But while I was stationed in Germany, our recreation room had been remodeled. And so, because the old, that had been a German officer's building, and it was like fancy woodwork, I'm telling you. And the guys sitting around with all this, refined plywood or whatever it was, it's real fancy, clean, neat. So what had happened is they painted over all that wood, and then there were blank spots everywhere, right? So our captain one day asked for volunteers that could do murals or artwork in the recreation area. And so I remember thinking, God, there were some guys that had talked about having gone to universities to study art, right? So that was in my mind that they, son of a gun, I thought, they're going to get the job. But I raised my hand and nobody else did. So, wow. So then I had the best job in the whole unit. Right. I still had to go on alerts, right? Still had to do KP and guard duty, but I didn't have to be out in the fields all the time. So I had the cozy job, man. So I was doing some murals there at the recreation hall. Then I began to notice something in my spectators, right? For example, I painted the New York skyline, kind of large actually. And I remember seeing some guys from New York, because they talk about their neighborhoods or whatever, barrios, whatever, wherever they lived in New York, talk about their homes back in New York. And so I thought, wow, I'm glad I did this because those guys like it. And then I drew a cowboy and his horse. And these were like, 7 feet by 7 feet panels or areas. So I painted a cowboy and his horse. And I noticed that people that had worked in ranches or rodeos or, the Western types would gather around and sit on the floor, right? I'm painting there and the guys were sitting over here talking about their works in rodeos or their horses, whatever. So I thought, wow, this is touching those guys. It's touching them somehow. I did Mount Rushmore and nobody ever came to sit around that one. so silly.
That's sad.
I didn't notice it at first, but later on I thought, wow, man, nobody likes this thing. And then I drew a couple of girls bikini clad on a beach in California. And then I did a German village from a view from up above. That wasn't very American, right? But I really wanted to do that. In any case, so when I came home in 1962, I got the regular jobs like everybody does at that age without any education, right? So I got enrolled at a college called Lee Junior College in Baytown, Texas. And I went there like a year and a half maybe. I didn't do any artwork there with the exception of some small pieces. And what else happened there? Not too much happened there. I got married during those years, and I began to get involved in the Chicano activism that was taking place in those days. I did some cartoons for this Chicano newspaper called Papel Chicano, right? So I did a few cartoons. I did a couple of outdoor signs, like with lettering and so on. And then in 1972, might have been 71, this man called me from the Houston Chamber of Commerce, right? I said, well, that's interesting. The guy said, we want to talk to you at the first opportunity possible, something like that. And I said, sure, two rich, wealthy, millionaire ladies, Diane Smith and forgot the other's name, Sakowitz, both Jewish families. I found out later. And the head of the Cultural Affairs Committee of the Chamber of Commerce. They came and I was doing murals in this community center, and they never looked at my murals. I mean, I disliked them right away. What they told me next is that they had their Oktoberfest every year, but no Hispanos ever came to that. And they wanted to do a mural in process during the Oktoberfest to entice more Mexican Americans, Hispanos, to come to the Oktoberfest. I was not about to do a mural on the Oktoberfest. I had been in Germany,
right,
and had read a lot of the German history and brutality and so on. So I was not inclined to paint any, and I wanted to tell them to leave. I already felt bad about them because they hadn't looked at my murals all around them, right?
Right.
I thought, what rotten people here. But then for these two women to want to depict the Oktoberfest, I just, I was trying to think, what can I do? I wanted to tell them to get out, but I didn't want to be rude.
Mm-hmm.
So then I remembered the wall on Canal Street that everybody wanted to paint, right? The perfect wall, right in the neighborhood, right in the area between 2nd Ward and Magnolia Community, right in the middle of there's two big barrios, right? And so I thought about it. You know what? Yeah, I could do a mural. And if you only get me this wall, right? Get me this wall and I'll do a mural. You can say whatever you want about it, that this is in conjunction with the Oktoberfest. I don't know if they might have done that, but I don't think so. In any case, we saw the plant manager. It was on a plant called United Can Company, I think. They made cans, right, for canned food and so on. So actually, I had gone to see about that wall before, and the manager had been real rude to me, right? For example, I went up to the office and I said, I'm here to see Mr. Bear. Mr. Bear comes out to see me. And so I thought I was going to be in the office with him talking about the idea that I had. So I told him, I wanted to ask you about that wall facing Canal Street. I'd like to paint some murals on that wall. And he said, we don't want any murals on our walls, and walked away. So anyway, the second time that I went with two millionaire ladies and the head of the Cultural Affairs Committee of the Houston Chamber of Commerce. And this time the guy comes out and he said, I've heard you're a good artiste. Now, he hated me the first time he saw me, but now he saw me in the
because you're associated with these other women.
Right.
So he's willing to talk to you.
He invited me in and them in, and so there were cookies and coffee and everything, right? And they told him that they'd like to do a mural in conjunction with the Oktoberfest. Again, they kept repeating that. It's so funny. And the man right away agreed, almost right away. So those two ladies got me 100 gallons of paint, right? They got me the scaffolds that I needed, all the supplies I needed, but they were not able to provide me with any funds for myself, right? If I wanted to do it that way, it would be okay with them. Again, I was angry at them, for this attitude to be able to tell an artist, right, you're going to do this giant mural, here's your paint, here's your scaffolds and your brushes, but we can't pay you, right? You do it. And I thought, well, hell, I'll have to write proposals or seek funds some other way, right? So I agreed to do it that way. But in 1.5 years that it took me to paint that mural, I only received about $400 or $500 altogether. and plus loans that I got from my in-laws and other friends. In any case, that mural was so important for Houston, for the Chicano community especially, and for many of the activists in the arts or other mural painters. Nothing could compare to this. I mean, I didn't even know what I was doing because, again, it's like you get caught up in some weird situation. Like people wanted the Oktoberfest painted, and I come up with this idea of the Mexican-American community moving, like here, towards a center moment of self-discovery, right? This is what I'm trying to do. I forgot all about those women. They never once came to see me after that initial agreement. They never went, nor the man from the Cultural Affairs Committee of the Chamber of Commerce. They never came back. They left me alone, thank goodness. But they must have thought that I was feeling bad that they didn't come. I didn't worry a bit. In any case, so the mural had a life of its own. It was so, I don't know quite how to tell you, but there's an area across the street that has like a little roof, so there's a little shady area there. There's people always gathering there to look at us or to ask us questions throughout the life of the mural, especially towards the last part when they could see all the images painted, or many of them painted already. And so we had this wonderful rapport with the community. One time this tough guy, Anglo guy, is saying something to me, and I don't know what he was saying. I can't remember that. But this teenage boy came up here like this and put himself right in front of that guy. And this was like a gang member. I don't know what he was.
Right. Got in his face, huh?
So just protecting me, right?
Right.
You know, we had many instances of people bringing us beer or even cocaine or marijuana, and I would always tell them, no, man. And I told my helpers, my assistants, we cannot be doing this. You know, beer is okay, but no drugs here. So a couple of times Anglo guys came from somewhere in the city. They wanted to give us some marijuana, or I don't know what it was. And I told them, we don't do drugs here, man. And one guy, one person driving away said, "How ungrateful."
So it's interesting that these people are just randomly showing up while you're doing this project, painting this mural,
right,
and just offering you things,
assuming that we use this stuff.
Yeah,
right. They couldn't. I guess they thought, well, being Chicano Mexicans, they probably use this stuff all the time. Well, I hardly ever smoked marijuana even.
Right.
I drank beer though, so people would bring me 2 or 3 6-packs a day, man. I didn't know what to do with so much beer, so I gave it out to other folks.
So you had a team that was painting, right? Were they younger kids? Or?
Yeah, they were like somewhat younger than me, maybe 10 years younger than me. The main person was Remigio Sparks Garcia. We called him Sparks. He was a Vietnam veteran that had been damaged in the war.
Right.
But anyway, he and another student that, by the way, Sparks was a student with me at Texas Southern under Dr. John Biggers. So we were both from Texas Southern.
Right.
But there was one young lady that came from the University of Houston, our department, and others that came and went, you know, others that painted like on weekends, a small area. And we had especially one young boy named Tony. They called him Jesus because his hair was black, and he kept it real long, man, real long. And he was real handsome, and all the girls liked this guy. And so he was one of our team. He painted really, really well. Now, one day I was in my little office, and he came in to tell everybody else, get out. I want to talk to Leo. So everybody left, you know. And he said, do you ever wonder why I always order whatever you and Sparks order when we go to a restaurant? He said, because I can't read. He couldn't read or write. He was in the 9th grade, man. Can you imagine?
Right.
And also he mainly painted after school and on weekends, really, really dedicated to the project. Couldn't believe that kid. And his brother came out of the army and got a job as a dishwasher at the Rise Hotel downtown Houston. And one day he shot 4 people and himself.
Oh, no.
Well, anyway, so the family was really, really hurting about something, right? I don't know what happened. But I got to know Tony's mother and sister. I didn't get to meet his brother. But the whole family, the whole neighborhood was in shock because they knew Tony and his family. But Tony went on, and I don't know whatever happened to Tony. He stopped coming at some point. I never heard any more about him. I met all kinds of people while painting this mural on Canal Street. People would just come and tell you stories. That they would tell you, it's like without thinking that I might be suspicious of them saying something to me. One time, a number of us and the kids were sitting on the ground in front of the mural. There was a little grassy area, and so we're sitting there, and there's two Chicano kids sweating. They come and join our little group. I said, "Hey, what's the matter?" And something about the cops were looking for us. And I looked down the street, and sure enough, there's a car going by, and another one comes by, and those kids were just sitting there with us, right? And when the cops are finally gone, they take off running again. So I don't know what's happening. Another time I'm driving on Canal Street, and I give this kid a ride. There was another friend of mine and myself, and we give this kid a ride, and he goes down on the seat, right way down in the back seat, as to not to be seen. And I glanced back, and he had a gun right here, and he was running again from the cops. So we met all kinds of people doing this mural. For me, it was an awakening.
So this mural really brought people from all these different communities.
Right.
Kind of, this was like it drew them in.
Right.
And you got to have all these different experiences from
Right.
all these different people.
And I made him talk about their Chicano history, right? Because that's one thing that we talked a lot about was, like, for example, one thing that I repeated is because I had researched it somewhere, but in any case, I had found out that Mexican Americans had fought in wars from the Civil War on to today. And some people say that they were Spanish soldiers with Washington, but at least Mexican Americans were in the Civil War. From the South, there was Texan Mexicans that had been coaxed into joining the Confederacy, and soldiers from California and New Mexico had joined the Union. So you see, in that case, we represented both sides. But I would tell people things like that, and then of course the First World War, where one of my uncles had served, and then in the Second World War especially, there were many Mexican Americans from everywhere, Texas, New Mexico, California, everywhere, that joined the service or were drafted. But what happened is that in combat, these Mexican-American soldiers behaved themselves with a lot of gallantry and bravery, and they were awarded so many medals, more so than any other group. Like the Japanese Americans received a lot of commendations and so on. But Mexican-American soldiers, they made great contributions, let's put it that way. And we knew of one particular soldier from Texas, from the area near Houston, a soldier named Macario Garcia. He got the Medal of Honor, and he came home one day after getting discharged. He went to a restaurant in Sugar Land, Texas, and they refused to serve him. I don't know if you heard of that case. But he crashed up the place, broke the windows, and beat up some people. He was a mean guy. And he was arrested then. But then it became known that they had refused service to a soldier. So I would tell those kind of stories to folks that we got into discussions with them right in front of the mural or across the street looking at the whole mural. So we had so many discussions, and I think the mural served to educate a lot of people or to prompt them into educating themselves.
You got educated. It was a kind of a symbiotic relationship. Everybody was benefiting from the work that you were doing.
It was so beautiful to see that happening, in your very person and your very surroundings immediately. I've written an article that I forget all the words to this passage here, but I say the mural became something like a mirror in our community, where the community exalted itself, right? Seeing itself depicted in the mural. These are images like that Pachuco, the guy pointing at you.
Right.
There were a lot of those kind of folks among the late 20s, early 30s. A lot of Pachucos and a lot of other people, like the farm workers flag and all these things, what they meant. So people would be hearing some of this for the first time in their lives. Something about the farm workers union, for example, and Cesar Chavez. It was like us telling something. For example, that sign that man is carrying, can you tell what it says?
This one right here.
The Ayala, the Plan de Ayala. The significance of that is that one of the greatest heroes of the Mexican Revolution was a man named Emiliano Zapata. And Zapata fought along with all the other revolutionaries in their distinct territories because that's the way it developed. But Zapata represented the Indio and the campesinos, right? So when the revolution finally wound down, a lot of the revolutionaries met to form a constitution for the liberated Mexico, right? Some years earlier, Zapata had come up with a Plan de Ayala. It was a plan of land reform.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
So all the other revolutionaries, some of them that turned out to be landowners, didn't want this plan of Zapata that was for agrarian reform as a new part of the Constitution, right? So they decided that Zapata had to go, so they assassinated him. But the Plan de Ayala lived on with many people hoping someday to have that instituted into the Mexican Constitution, the plan of liberation for the campesino, for the landowner, for the land worker. So we would share that kind of story for people that always wanted to hear more, right? Mm-hmm. So I would tell them, and this is your heritage. We just had an ongoing dialogue with the community.
I got a question. Mm-hmm. So the banner at the top, it says, I believe it says, to become aware of your story is to become aware of our singularity.
It says to become aware of our history is to become aware of our singularity. When you look at all of Latin America, the United States, Europe, there's hardly any country that has as rich a culture as Mexico, dating from the pre-Columbian peoples to the modern times. The diversity of our culture, of our peoples, is something really unique. When you study our history, people like Zapata, even horrible people like Hernán Cortés, the conqueror of Mexico, or the dramatic young man that resisted the Spaniards named Cuauhtémoc. Incredible personalities that are so much, they give you such wonderful, wonderful exhibits. Bartolomé de las Casas was a Spanish priest that protected the Indians that went back and forth to Spain, to the king, right? He seemed to have had access to the king. In any case, there's so many beautiful, beautiful personalities and instances of heroism and beauty. And then here comes the Mexican masters, Rivera, Orozco, Siqueiros, and so many others that achieved worldwide attention, except in the U.S., of course. These guys were mainly communists. And Siqueiros was a great communist, so was Rivera, and many others. But what I've thought about is that all these wonderful masters and all the great educated people that had done murals, that worked in the arts, movies, and so on, I don't think that people were aware of what was going on in the neighborhoods or in the barrios, in the communities where people were painting murals in their churches, in the lounges and bars. And I do have one wonderful book that talks about that. That's really wonderful. The cantinas, we call them. They were doing murals in there. They're so beautiful. I want to have them in black and white. But before I leave, I can show you some of those. So this is the kind of feeling that we had. And at the time, I think I was more vocal, more sure of myself that I could talk about these things. We even had fights in front of the mural. Like with rednecks, we actually had fights. Prostitutes would come and wanted to be with us. It was so funny. And then a couple of ministers trying to tell us that this was against the will of God, something like that, that God does not want this. There was Chicano.
So you got
priests.
all different types of viewpoints.
Right. So you can imagine the thinking, the confusion that somebody like me, my first wife and I went to a church in Houston, and our kids went to a church in Houston called Trinity Baptist Church. It was a Mexican-American church. So one day we were in a classroom, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm seeing the police raiding this home of immigrants. So there, in the Baptist church, it seems to me, everybody reads the passage that's being studied, and you comment on it, right? This is what I think. So when it came for me to comment, I said, don't you think the police should stop doing this, killing our people, our young people? Like, if you look out the window, you will see what they're doing right this minute, right? They were dragging some people out, actually. And that's because many of us don't speak out and protect our community, right? And this man, this big old Chicano guy, jumps up and stands right in front of me and tells me, "Comunista, comunista," with this clenching his teeth, it's so horrible. I thought, my God, this guy, he didn't come from God. And so, things like that throughout, and I wasn't an intellectual or highly educated. I had great moments where I met, for example, Siqueiros, the great Mexican master. And I showed him slides of photographs of my murals, and he really liked them.
Is that right?
You know who that was, Siqueiros?
I don't know.
He's one of the great muralists.
One of the three great muralists.
Okay.
And he was the youngest of the three.
And can you tell our audience that might not know this, who were considered in that group of people, these muralists, who those
of course
people were, these artists?
Well, in 1911, the Mexican government decides to celebrate Mexico's 100th anniversary. And so they invite an enormous exhibition of Spanish artists. Can you believe that? And so the young Mexican artists are wondering, wait a minute, what about us, right? So that was the attitude that many people in the government and in the upper classes had towards Mexican artists and Mexican campesinos, craftsmen. They didn't respect the creative spirit of Mexico. Right. And after that, the revolution takes place, right? And some of these young artists join the revolution, and they become, great revolutionaries, of course. But after the revolution, some of them met, and the foremost among those that organized these meetings was Siqueiros, right? So Siqueiros and others said, now that the revolution is over, what are we going to do? Are we going to continue the same kind of works that fit in the galleries in Paris or in New York or other places? Is that what kind of artists we're going to be after having seen the struggle of the people? And that set him off on painting murals about the people. Diego Rivera was another of the three great ones. But Diego Rivera stayed in France and Spain during the whole time of the revolution. He never came back during that period. The third one was Jose Clemente Orozco, who was also fantastically developed and a great intellectual. And he had been in the revolution, but his paintings were a little not as political as Siqueiros, or even as political as Rivera. Those three, Siqueiros, Diego Rivera, and Jose Clemente Orozco, were the three great masters that were acknowledged worldwide, right, for the great murals and great art, and even personalities, right, like Diego Rivera. But then there were many others not as developed or not as recognized, let's say, as Rivera, Orozco, and Siqueiros, but that did great works. Now, how could that matter to the Chicanos? It's because we were the same heritage, the same community, so that we began to copy or to look at these three great masters especially. Rivera died in 1957, I believe, and Orozco must have been right around the same time. But Siqueiros lived until 1974. So during the years of the Chicano movement, from the late 60s to the mid-70s, many of us wanted to meet Siqueiros. That was the one surviving of the three great masters. So many people began to find ways to go and meet Siqueiros. And Siqueiros was real welcoming to everybody. So, and I wanted to go too, right? Except that I didn't have any contacts or any connections with anybody that could put me in touch with Siqueiros. So one time, this group of actors in Houston, Los Mascarones, a wonderful political group of young actors, had been performing at this big community center right in the middle of the community in Second Ward. So the ones that had invited the Mascarones to come to Houston had not seen to have enough places for them to sleep, right? So they asked me, could I put up some of the Mascarones? And my home had a big old living room. It was very spacious for some reason. So I told them, you know what, they could all fit in here. And they brought the whole group over. So all these young people are sleeping in a duffel bag, on sleeping bags on the floor there. And the leader of the group and I are sitting over there talking. And I asked the guy, do you know any way I could go visit Siqueiros? I really want to meet him. And the guy said, that's his grandson.
Oh, he's right there. Wow.
In the morning I grabbed that kid and he agreed to take me to meet his grandpa. Things like that happen. I had to raise the money, so in about 2 months I went to visit Siqueiros and I took photographs of my murals to show him. He seemed to be impressed, actually.
How did that feel, to have this great master look at your work?
It was really great. I mean, I came back to Houston humbled. He was also working on some giant murals in his enormous studio that I had, like a 20-foot tall studio with rails to move his enormous panels for these murals. And he's telling me all about this. And, and he invites me for supper. So I had supper with Siqueiros and his wife and a French artist that had been visiting him. So he really wanted to know about Chicanos, right? And of course, my attitude in the community was not always like the bravado type or the tough guy. I wasn't like that. In any case, so he was really interested. A year later, I took 10 Chicano artists, young Chicano artists, to meet Siqueiros. It had moved me to be more active with young people. And so even though I had worked on the wall on that Canal Street mural for a long time, met a lot of young people, I still thought that we should do more, right, for these younger artists. And of course, some of those guys became wonderful painters, mural painters. And then I went on to the next mural.
What did Siqueiros advise you to paint about?
Oh, yeah. I was showing Siqueiros my murals, and actually I took photographs of other Chicano artists. And a lot of these Chicanos, I didn't do that very much, painted big old pyramids, the great pyramids, and the Aztec warrior, the Spanish soldier. And there was even a poster there that said, we are from noble something, and something great about the Spaniards and great about the Indios. And I was embarrassed about that because I didn't feel right being descendant of nobility. I mean, I was from the poor people. That's where I was from. And that's what I wish I had been able to tell the artist that did that painting. Hey, wait a minute, buddy. See, I don't want to be part of the nobility. They were the ones that kept the other ones down, right?
Right.
The same for the Aztecs. They sacrificed people. They tortured people. You see, so I didn't have that attitude. So I showed these drawings in photographs of my murals. And I think he was impressed with my murals, but also by my attitude that I had of trying to stay in touch with the community, trying to be part of the community always. And I think he was a little impressed, right? So I came back, and then the following year, in 1973, I organized a group of about 10 Chicano artists, including myself, right? It's a great experience for those guys. They were looking around Siqueiros' studio, grabbing things. Can I have this, maestro? Can I have this? One guy found an old brush that was hardened, and he was the one that was most grateful. He said, can I have this, maestro? And he said, yes. I think Siqueiros was getting a little tired of us. And this is inside this big studio, so imposing, so dramatic to meet a person like this. This was a revolutionary that had fought in the Mexican Revolution.
Right.
He had been jailed a number of times. He was a colonel in the Spanish Revolution on the side of the revolutionaries, of course. So many actions in confrontations with the police, with the army, and and being part of being head of a union, just a dramatic individual and so welcoming to us, right? One of our kids, in fact, Sparks, the one I mentioned earlier, he was calling Siqueiros. See, the way to address a great master is maestro. But when you're working in the construction or in the jobs, you call each other maestro. so Sparks is calling Siqueiros maestro. Siqueiros just looked at him one time, thinking Sparks was being wise, but that's what Sparks thought.
Right.
The way you said maestro was maestro. So all kinds of little experiences like that. He began to tell us about the revolution, how he fell off his horse and broke his left arm, I think it was, and all these little experiences that he had. So you see how all that was an education for me as a mural painter.
Yeah. But he wanted you to focus on something else instead.
Yes, he said, try to paint your own situation in the United States. Think about, what your community has been through and so on. But that's what I remember the most is that he had said, we already painted many of these things. You're painting pyramids, Zapata, all kinds of beautiful things.
The mythology kind of. Right.
But here you are with a great community in the heart of the monster, he said.
Right. Oh, that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
Right. In the heart of the monster.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
He might have said the heart of the devil, but it was one of those.
Right, one or the other.
Right.
Either way, it's pretty powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
So Siqueiros was flying to Japan one time, and the plane stopped in L.A., I think, and the police would not let him off the plane, right? Because they didn't want him in American territory.
Right.
So he had a reputation. And I'm sorry that a lot of these great masters are not known very much, although Rivera has been more accepted in the U.S., just like Frida Kahlo has been accepted very much.
Right. I think it's that relationship, because she was pretty popular in her day, right? Even in the United States.
Yes, she was.
Yeah.
But not to this degree, right?
Right.
Somebody said, if all these women that are trying to emulate or to respect or to glorify Frida Kahlo knew that she hated the United States, right? She was a communist, a hardcore communist, you could say. And all these folks have no idea who she was, right? Except that I want to dress like Frida, or I want to be like Frida. If they had only known, if they would nowadays study who Frida Kahlo was.
Well, I think their popularity too is the power of their personality. Right, because both of them had very strong personalities.
Right. Yeah, both Rivera in exaggerating matters, and Frida, I think, in being the more emotional, more rebel in her person than Diego Rivera's social viewpoint of the whole society.
Because isn't it true? I think I've read that she would antagonize him sometimes, kind of give him a hard time. Like, hey.
One time I read that Rivera fell off a scaffold, and they brought him in the door, and they asked her, "Where do you want him?" And she said, "I only quiera, there, anywhere." So it's so funny. So these were great personalities, right? And to have contact with them did so much for me anyway. I wouldn't ever compare my work to Siqueiros, but I think I've been influenced by Siqueiros, like the movement of people. That was one of Siqueiros' styles of painting. The masses of people moving on towards something, towards liberation.
Okay.
And I think that I got that from Siqueiros. In any case, so I came back to Houston, and the next mural that
Before you leave the Rebirth of Our Nationality in Houston, could you talk about the women's issues that you painted about in 1972 to 1973?
Right. Well, I was conscious of our women in the communities. I had so many experiences. One time, I was doing a big, I don't know what it was, a big mural, I think, inside this hallway. Just I could look out and see the hallway, people coming back and forth. And one of those times, this young lady that I had seen go back and forth stopped and said, "Señor, could you watch my kids? I had to go, I forgot what she had to do, and the kids liked what I was painting, so I said, sure. So I took care of the kids, and finally, about an hour later, she came. She was so sweaty under the arms. She stopped there, and she just looked, and she said, Senor, could you hold me for a minute?
Really?
Just to hold her.
Right.
Wow.
I said, sure. Well, when she first said that, I thought she needed like some money or something. And I remember thinking, well, I've got a few bucks. So that's what I was going to do, is give her a few bucks, right? When she asked me, Señor, oh yeah, Señor, me hace un favor. Can you do me a favor? And I said, sure, thinking she needs some money. After that, I got to meet her another time. And she said that her husband had just been given 16 years in prison, right? And she was a very pretty young lady, and people are hitting on her in the neighborhood. They knew she had a couple of kids, and she lived by herself. So, and I remember telling her, no, you have got to just let him go. He's done this before to you, been in jail, been in prison before, and he's still doing this. Don't you think it's about time that you stood for your kids, for yourself, and so on? That's what I mean by being preachy, right? So, I don't know, a year later, somebody's honking at me. And I turned, there's this big old Mexican guy with a big mustache, looked like from the revolution, right? And he was smiling and waving, right? But next to him was that girl. And she was waving, and the kids were waving. So I said, oh, man, I hope she marries this guy. Something like to change her life, right? Not only that, but sometimes in the projects, you could hear women getting beaten. And nobody dares to try and stop that. Or maybe they do, but you'd hear it too often, or you'd hear it from women themselves. So I had a consciousness. So when I did this mural, I think I painted it like 2 or 3 times in the mural, where there's a woman that's raising up from her condition, trying to move towards the awakening over here. So my wife was a little surprised that I had done those since 1972, but I did that. I did a woman with her hands cut off, that you might be able to see there where you are.
Right there.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, people would ask me, what does that mean, Leo? And I say, well, that's about our women in our own lives, right? Pinches gringos. Somebody might say, goddamn gringos. And I say, well, you know what? It's not just the gringos, it's our own culture, our own attitude, our own machismo that does that to women. So don't go blame everything on. Can you imagine me defending the gringos? No, but I wasn't defending them. I was just saying, just don't look at what others have done. Right. Think about what we've done ourselves, right?
You were speaking truth. And sometimes people have a hard time processing that, right. But when you speak the truth, right. You can't argue with it. Right. And then people get emotional and they get mad, they get worked up about it because they're like, yeah, you're right.
Because it touches them.
It touches them. Yeah. And they have to be introspective then.
Yeah. And see how all of us had those attitudes in our culture. And there was a period of a great... a golden age of Mexican film in the 40s, maybe early 50s, maybe 30s, I don't remember. But even then, the women are depicted as very mild, very submissive. In any case, so this mural was meant to tell people, even without me knowing it sometimes, thinking of what I was doing, I'm going to paint a woman here with a little boy, holding her and pointing towards the flower, the moment of liberation. So I did that 2 or 3 times on this mural. I don't remember what they all are, but I know that there's another one over here. Okay, so the next mural that I wanted to do was about police brutality in Houston, right? I mean, this is a cruel city. The example that finally drove me to do this giant mural was the case of Joe Campos Torres, a Vietnam veteran from Second Ward, Houston, was drinking one night and acting rowdy, right? So they called the police. And he's trying to resist arrest, but they finally put him in the car. There were 3 policemen. And so they took him to a secluded spot in the near downtown Houston area. and gave him such severe beatings that they finally decided to take him. But now we can take you to jail. But the jailers saw that Joe Campos was so beaten up that they told the policeman to take this man to the hospital, right? And of course, they took him back to that same secluded spot, and they beat him some more, and then they threw him in the bayou. That is over there, they call the river, I guess, the bayou, the creeks. And he drowned. He had been beaten so severely. So finally they arrested. Oh yeah, and the second beating, the 3 policemen were joined by another 3 policemen. So 6 policemen beaten on this young man. And so they were part of these beatings, right? 6 policemen. But only 3 were finally indicted after a lot of struggle in the community, riots and so on. The 3 policemen only were indicted. And these policemen were given 1 year in jail. Okay, the community is so upset about that also, and there's more riots and more confrontations until a federal judge agrees to hear the case. The second judge gives the same 3 policemen a year and a day to be served concurrently. In other words, just 1 extra day. 1 extra day. So that's Houston for you. So I said, I've got to do something. So I designed a mural that I thought would tell the story, right? So I was working on this mural. My wife, meanwhile, was suffering from cancer. I was working on the mural when I wasn't with my wife in Galveston, which is the hospital that she was in. So I'd go to Baytown to Houston to Galveston almost every day. I finally my wife got really sick, and she died April of that year, 1983. At the same time that happened, though, I was doing a mural on the environment with a big grant from the city of Houston that Dr. Biggers had helped me get. So at almost at the same time that my wife is sick and that she dies, they canceled my mural on the environment suddenly without any explanation. When I asked, why are you doing this? They said, sue us, the Arts Council of Houston. Well, at the same time that all this is happening, my mural on police brutality disappears, right? It disappeared. I didn't know how this could be, all these things happening. So I told my kids, my wife told me actually before she passed away that she wanted me and the kids to move to some other city, she said, where they will let you paint. So we moved to Denver, my kids and I, because we have a lot of family in Denver that had resettled over here. We came here real brokenhearted, my kids and I.
So do you think they canceled the one mural because of the police brutality mural? Do you think they're connected?
It might have been, actually. I never thought about it that way.
I was just kind of curious.
But it's possible.
Because I could imagine that, I suppose depending on where in the community the police brutality mural is at, it can be a lightning rod of all sorts of emotion.
Right. Well, this was meant to be a freestanding outdoor mural, right? And I was doing it outdoors in sections. But the mural on the environment also condemned the petrochemical industry in the Houston area.
So there was
big
some
industry.
Yeah. And actually, this Chicano secretary told me, I used to go visit asking about my money, can you please give me some of my money? Because they owed me all that money still for the mural on the environment, which I had not completed up to that time. But there's still money in my grants that was available, except they're holding that from me. So one time this girl told me, I became friends with this young secretary. She told me that some people from Exxon had been there to talk to the Arts Council director, Mrs. Piacentini. So then I thought, and some other people. So I thought maybe Exxon and some of these other companies along the Houston Ship Channel were worried about what I had been saying on TV interviews that I was given.
You'd hit a nerve, these people recognize what.
I think so. So it could have been that something from the police brutality mural might have influenced our thinking, right, about this is too political. So
I want to ask you, though, so as an artist, so what's the role of art when it comes to social justice? I mean, that's how we have voice, right?
Right. Well, in current times, I think our society is moving so fast to pay attention to almost anything. It's almost like you have to make them stop and pay attention, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that the artists in our society should think of new ways of addressing, whether it's in drama, like many years ago, they used to have guerrilla theater in the neighborhoods or in the city, many areas, or to have poetry written on walls, like I saw in Chicago. Beautiful poetry on walls, just fantastic. To think of new ways. My new way of doing art was to create these freestanding pieces, right? That I could be dismantled, taken to another location, and so on.
Was anybody else doing this?
I don't think so.
Like you kind of came up with this concept.
I think so.
Yeah.
I saw one that an artist did in Houston, but I'm the one that had given him the idea. Raul Valdez did a freestanding piece, and he got funded for that. So my mural on police brutality had no funds. When they took it away, it was a big blow because I was really attached to that mural, more so than the one I was doing on the environment. Right. So I was doing these two gigantic murals. I mean, these are big murals. The one on the environment had been filmed, and they dwelt a lot on the petrochemical industry that I was trying to depict. And somebody might have seen that part of the interview. Mm-hmm. And another person did a film and going slowly through all the images. And these are two big panels like wings, large old wings, about 50 feet long by about 13 feet tall. One wing on this side of the building, one wing on the other side of this community center. And so they do real slow filming of the mural and the imagery on one side, and then they do the same thing on the other side, and then the same thing real slow, like giving people a chance to see that. And I'm trying to explain it, it's too slow actually to explain. But anyway, and then the outdoor central piece is outdoors, and they filmed that the same way, so it's real dramatic, the things that they did. But that was my contribution to seeing art in a different way, right? Siqueiros had told me, do like we did, do this or do that. And I told him, Maestro, but we don't get funds from the government like you do, because they received a lot of grants from the government. And I told him, we don't have nobody wants to fund us, especially me, right? Nobody wants to give me any funds. So how am I going to do that? And then he said, tienes razón. You're right. But that was, I guess, my story. I hate to tell you, but it got repeated. Mm-hmm. In Houston. And then so finally I decided I needed to get out of there. Yeah. So the kids and I came to visit our cousins here, and we saw the beautiful state this is, right? And the community is so strong. This Chicano community in Denver is a strong community. I think that's left over from Corky Gonzalez and the Crusade for Justice, a wonderful group here that existed here for many years. It toughened the community, right? We came here, my cousin said, let's go to the inaugural ball. I said, what inaugural ball? Mayor Peña, our new mayor is Chicano. Wow. It's a big deal. I'm telling you, it's a big, important deal, because this young mayor was like 40 years old. He was from Texas, actually. And so he was so popular, at least at first. But anyway, so Houston, Denver was another place where I think our community was respected more than what I had seen in Houston, right? How can they sentence 3 policemen to 1 year and 1 day in jail? Right. Not only the state, but the state and the federal courts. And I don't think in Denver they would have put up with that. Yeah. Such a tough place, I thought. Well, anyway, I started to attend Our Lady Guadalupe Catholic Church, and I began to hear all these descriptions about the gang violence that's taking place in Houston, the killings that are going on. And so I decided to do a mural on gang violence, except this was to be a transportable mural in sections, right? You took it apart and reset it and reassembled it on gang violence.
Was this in Houston or in Denver?
In Denver, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
So I did my sketches, and I went to the priest. Father Pat Valdez was a young priest, really a dramatic young activist priest. And so I told him, Father, I want to do this mural on gang violence, And I showed him the plans, and he really, really liked it. He said, oh yeah, we got to do this. So he went over across the room. There was a little table there with a little drawer, and he pulled out a whole bunch of money, man. I didn't know they were all $1 bills. He counted $100 bills. It's so funny. But anyway, I also got a grant from the Sisters of Loreto, a very progressive group of nuns that have since become a national group, right? Fantastic. Anyway, so they fund a lot of progressive ideas. So they gave me, I don't remember how much, but 1,000 or 1,500. So then I did that mural on gang violence, and it's two interlocked forms, upright, representing the human body, both pieces, like interlocked, like a fight among two gang members on one side, with the arms extended one over the other. On the other side, one arm is uplifting the other figure. So that was real popular. And I was doing that at Our Lady Guadalupe Catholic Church Community Center. I was doing the mural at the opposite end to the entrance, right? So, I need to tell you this little story, okay? Well, one time I was painting, and my wife enters from the opposite side, just wearing a light gray suit, or maybe it was white. Anyway, so she's coming in. I said, oh my God, this is the lady from the dream.
Oh, is that right?
When they burned my studio down in Houston, one time I took my wife. I said, come on, let's go see, And she said, I'm not going in there. So one night I dreamed that I was showing somebody the destruction that I had already seen, right? It was a lady in white. See, I'm showing this Anglo lady, blonde lady. See what they did to my studio and to my easels, all kinds of things that I had, the compressors that I had bought. And so that's the lady from the dream. So when I turn over, and here comes Jean. Come on, let's go to lunch.
And Jean was the lady from your dreams.
Yeah.
And that's your current wife.
That's her. Sitting right there.
Oh, that's so funny.
That is fantastic.
So, fantastic things. So anyway, so I did that mural. But while I was doing the mural, as I said, I was at the far end of the community center. And so people could walk in, and they had a little space to walk before they got to the mural. So soon I began to get visits by gang members, right? And when these guys would walk in, they would always be swaggering in there, right? And like tough guys do, I guess.
Right.
So then I'd explain the mural to them, how one side were killing each other, right? And I tell them the statistics that I had gotten from the police department as to what percentage of those incarcerated were Mexican Americans and how many of the black community and so on. And I tell them that, see, we get sent to prison, to jail more than whites, almost as many as blacks do. What is it with us, Mm-hmm. Are we just born this way? Or what is it? Why can't we change our attitude? These are my preachy ways that I'm telling you. So the gang members, it was so funny because, I take them around the mural. I know I have a photograph of this there somewhere, but anyway, the pieces were 12 feet tall. This was an enormous mural, just to do. Father Pat was surprised when I built it. It barely fit in the community room. So when these kids saw it, right, they had never seen anything like this. They had seen murals on the walls, but these were murals on structures, right? And so I tell them, like there's a little girl in the mural with a book that's opened, and it says, love thy neighbor as thyself, but there's blood all over it, right? And there's a grandma figure, and this is swirling around figures. This grandma is showing us a mirror for us to look at ourselves. Anyway, so when these kids left, they were real polite to me. Gracias, señor. Thank you, sir. And they would not be swaggering when they left it.
The mural took the swagger right out of them. They had gotten
a big old scolding from me in a soft way, right?
Right.
And so another small group came another time, and also the same idea. But what Pat Valdez had come to tell me is that, Leo, who are these folks? They were doing graffiti inside that I had not seen. And the bathrooms were filled with graffiti. And so Father Pat was really, really concerned about that.
So they were doing graffiti in the church while they were visiting you. Right. You were showing them around. Somebody else was doing graffiti.
Yes. I didn't know how that happened. But I think that the guys that I spoke to were not the ones doing the graffiti, because those guys had become respectful. I mean, would they one time showing them an idea that struck them? Part of that mural showed a young kid is being dragged by other kids, his peers. I call that his peers. And they're dragging him towards a knife, towards killing somebody. Oh yeah, that's the side where the gang members were fighting. He's got his hand like this and he's stabbing the other kid that's fallen. And so that's what those two upstanding structural figures represent. On one side, the two figures are interlaced, with their arms interlaced, one over the other like this. And on one side, they're stabbing. One kid is stabbing the other. And on the other side, one of those figures is uplifting the other one.
Okay.
So it's really interesting. I show repeated faces of that kid going back like this. And I told the kids, this is what happens when you let your peer group, your buddies, your friends, that tell you got to do it, man, because we're tough here. Whatever it is, right? You wind up in prison. Not only do you hurt yourself, your life, but you're hurting your mom, your dad, your little brothers and sisters. They're watching you.
It affects everybody.
You're their example, right? So that mural, we showed it a couple of times. And then one time we had it at this place called Platte Valley. I don't know if you're familiar with that. If you live here, Platte Valley.
Oh, anyway, okay. Yes.
So we had it there on exhibit one night. And somebody came and hit it with a truck, we think. But it fell over one of those poles, like a concrete pole that was a guard against people going in there with the cars. Mm-hmm. And the pole went right through the mural. Ugh. So the mural had a lot of glue. I mean, most of it was glued pieces to the structure, to the frame. So I just got tired of messing with it because I was going to have to take it apart and put it back together. So I just kept it in pieces. And some of the pieces I still have in the garage or in my living room.
Is that part of that piece that's hanging up on the wall in the living room?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's part of it.
So just to go back a little bit, I just want to, and I'm sorry, this is a great story, but I'm going to stop you for a second. And so talk about your technique when you're building these movable structures, how they're built and...
Right. What I try to do is to give an idea, visual configuration. Let's say if I have the idea of a dove, right? It's simple to think I can do an outline of a dove, and I've done it, flying off from a pile of awful stuff, right? Liberation. Mm-hmm. So in the case of that, I've just gotten through telling you the figures of two fighting kids in structural shapes, right? So I think of the idea, right? And then I try to give that idea a structural form, right? Like I did a mural that I call Passageway of Values, and there's two structures that go like this.
They cross over each other.
And there's a passageway between them. Right?
Okay, underneath.
Right. Well, no, between them, not under. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, underneath. I see what you mean. In any case, so the on the panels are depicted kids that are in all kinds of troubles, right? Trouble, gangs, fights, and so on. On the opposite side of that structure, the kids are throwing out all those masks of the hoodlum, of the prostitute, of tough guy, whatever. All this are thrown down on the floor, and these kids are emerging from that, seeking like education, a better life, right? So when you go through this passageway, I would tell kids, you can either be part of this or you can be part of that, right? This is the preachy guy talking again to the poor kids, right? Anyway, so that's what I mean when I say structural or sculptural murals. Mm-hmm. The best piece I've done of this, following this style, is one that I call the Torch of Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl was a great deity that some historians or scholars compared to Christ in old ancient Mexico. This is the deity that loved humanity and stopped all human sacrifice when it became a priest religion. A priest assumes the the title of emperor, right? And he stops all human sacrifice, right? Later on, he's overthrown the actual king, right? But the legend gets connected, right? This priest finally is expelled from Mexico, right? And he says, someday I will return on the day of my birth, I think it is, which is Seacatl, one reed. That corresponds to a date. In any case, I could go on more about Quetzalcoatl, but just remember that when Cortés, the Spaniards, they arrive on the year one reed. Isn't that fantastic? In any case, that facilitated the conquest of Mexico a lot because the Aztecs thought this was Quetzalcoatl returning to reclaim his kingdom. In my usage of it, I decided to do a shape that had no corners in it anywhere because one of the deities connected with Quetzalcoatl, or Quetzalcoatl himself, in the guise of the god of the wind, right? In the description of the deity says that this deity knows no corners, nowhere. He can go freely wherever he wants to. So I decided to do this spread out wings, 72 feet around like that. I don't do anything small. It's become a tragedy sometimes. In any case, I do this wing-like shapes. They start from a smaller size, increasing in size to about 12 feet tall. Between these two wings, when you reach the center, there's a swirling motion. Wait, you see that over there?
Right. Yeah.
That's my mural.
What's that? Can you read underneath the title? I'm sorry.
It says The Torch of Quetzalcoatl, the Museum of Fine Arts in Santa Fe.
What's the title? Because I'm
the torch or La Antorcha de Quetzalcoatl.
Okay.
La Antorcha or the torch. I don't remember what I have there.
No, that's all right. I was just because I can't.
Yeah, it's in Spanish, right?
Yeah, right, and that's why I wanted you to read it. So, because I'll just torture it, so I don't.
Well, the beauty of this deity is that he represents the quetzal bird, which is the most beautiful bird with long tail feathers, maybe up to 3 feet sometimes. Wow! And it's such a beautiful bird.
Very colorful, right?
Very colorful, very beautiful, and real shimmering all over. You know, that's Quetzalcoatl. No, that's Quetzal, the Quetzal bird. But Quetzal is the lofty, right? And the serpent, see, it's a combination of the serpent and the bird. In other words, the lofty with the material, right? So it's a great concept that is attached to that deity. I called it the Torch of Quetzalcoatl, trying to say, this is our liberation. This is when you connect the spiritual, us humans, with the spiritual being connected, right? Like Quetzalcoatl represents the fusion of the material. You could say the material with the spiritual, to have that connection in all of us, right? To be able to say, I want to reach those regions of loftiness, of dignity, of beauty, of fairness, of all the beautiful things that we can imagine, and make those part of me as I sit down here with all the other humans. I mean, I'm one, but I'm part of a great, great humanity, right? Anyway, so that's what I used for that shape.
Where did you paint that mural, Leo?
Well, I painted it at Lake Middle School, at St. Thomas Seminary, and at the Denver Art Museum. Again, we had these visits of people. I mean, they were fascinated because there is a legend that's part of so many Latin American cultures and even in other cultures that's called the Weeping Woman.
Oh, yeah.
See, well, the central part of the mural is a swirling shape that contains the image of a young Chicano that's emerging from the flags that have controlled us or ruled us all our lives. And that's Spain, France, even England, and the United States. So as he's advancing upward and to the right, he sees the symbol of Chicano, of Chicanismo, let's say. And that's the farm worker flag of Cesar Chavez, the little Thunderbird image that's in
right. Yeah.
So he sees his own identity But as you go further down below, you see a woman greeting some children. And that's my concept of the weeping woman, because my weeping woman finds her children. After centuries of looking and looking, even in other cultures where the mother has been separated by her children and wanders the world looking for her children, I decided to make my weeping woman, La Llorona, find her children. People like that idea very much.
Because you're giving them hope as opposed to this other,
continuously
opposite, right?
crying, searching. Now, in any case, on the center of that part is the three-faced figure that represents the fusion of the Spanish or European with the native peoples of America. And so the center part is what most of us are. Chicanos, we're a mixture of those two. And that's called the mestizo. When you explain this to people, you see it's easy to understand. It doesn't need a whole lot of explanation, but nevertheless...
They can understand and wrap their head around it and go, oh, okay.
Right. And so we had that experience again and again. What happened at the museum is that there were sometimes busloads of kids that came to wander around the museum and be told about all the exhibits. But I think one of their favorite exhibits was my exhibit, because the wings provided an area in between the outspread wings where kids could sit and watch the mural and have me explain it. So when I tell them the story of La Llorona finding her children, well, before I told them the story, I'd always ask them, who knows the story of La Llorona? And a bunch of kids raised their hands. Tell me about it. We know where she lives. She lives under a bridge over there. And so on. They tell you all the stories, sometimes beautiful stories. And but a lot of people know this story. When I tell them, but I don't like that story. I don't like to know that a mother is searching forever for her children. You know how moms love their children so much. Can you imagine somebody taking away your children and let you wander searching for them for eternity, right?
Right.
So I'm going to change all that. I told the kids, from now on, you tell people, La Llorona found her children, right? So there it is. You have proof. And so from both sides, the people are approaching. The image on the upper left that you see there is my rendering of Quetzalcoatl, the combination of the Quetzal bird and the serpent and the human in the midst of all that. Then the woman with the hammer and some architectural plans under her arms is my older sister, Dina. And she's again, the constructor of a new life, let's say. But I didn't use a male figure. I used my sisters. Because remember I told you we moved from Beeville to Pasadena and so on. My sister got a job when we first came to Pasadena. She got a job. I got a job as a dishwasher, I told you. My sister got a job at a laundry place. And she stayed at that job 17 years. And then she had a nervous breakdown, and she never recovered. Anyway, so she's my heroine.
Yeah.
And down below is the grandma. People say people didn't wear those kind of caps or hats in the Chicano community. I said, my mom wore one.
It's like a bonnet. Yeah.
On the right side, we have an educator, like I'm trying to do here. An educator. Down below is a little girl bringing flowers. And then up on top is the figure of Zapata, that great Mexican revolutionary that refused to join the other revolutionaries at the end because he insisted on a plan for land reform. So it goes on and on like that mural, similar to this. But down below are symbols the community has overcome. And I have one of those figures is a Spanish skeleton. This is the one. The skeleton remains of down below on the dark area down below. Mm-hmm. Right. You see like pre-alignment images. Like I have one image there that we've overcome, right, is human sacrifice, right, in our history, let's say. But anyway, I have a bowl like this with human hearts. And can you believe it? When I had that mural at the Denver Art Museum, they brought those loads of kids, and sometimes teenagers or even university students would come in little groups. But one time this Chicano professor told me, I told the kids how horrible this was to have your heart torn out, right? Imagine that. And not only that, but imagine children, like 6-year-old child being brought to the very high temple and sacrificed there to the gods. Can you imagine doing that?
How horrific that would be.
Yeah, and then to not only that, but to take out somebody's hearts and give it up to the gods as an offering, right? Because the gods need blood, right? Human blood. So, and I'm having a little bowl of hearts, right? And so this Chicano guy says, "You can't be saying that in front of white folks." No, not folks, in front of white people. You said, because it condemns us, right? That's something bad to us to admit that these horrible things happen. Not only that, but to proclaim the Aztecs as a great civilization, which they were, but they depended on conquering other nations around them. One time there was, I've read the dedication of a temple, and I forget the name of the emperor that the temple was being dedicated to, but there's a line, thousands of young people being brought to be sacrificed in honor of this event of the dedication of this temple. So I read somebody describing that and human sacrifice in general, saying this was a series of atrocities brought upon the Mexican people. So I told that professor, I don't feel insulted if I see human hearts that have been taken out of human beings, because it happened, right? And the way I see it is that I don't want that to be repeated. I don't want that anymore to ever happen again. So that guy didn't like me.
Well, you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did that mural at the Denver Art Museum, and I was so lucky that so many people came. One time this man came over here, and Bill Meredith, he said, "Can I give you this?" And he gives me an envelope, and it's got $1,000 in there.
Nice.
So I had instances like that were always heartfelt.
People that saw your work and believed in what you were doing,
right,
and what you were trying to convey to the viewers.
Yeah,
that they were so
them.
Moved that we want you to continue to do this.
So I was so lucky all the way through there, in spite of the hard times that we had. But Denver was proven to be another kind of existence for me, right? I didn't get paid very much for that mural at the Denver Art Museum, but the attention that it got me was so beautiful, just over and over to have these things happen were fantastic. Then I was invited by University of Northern Colorado to do a mural depicting the life and times of Martin Candelaria, who had been a professor there, an Hispanic professor all his life, and then he passed away, but he was so recognized. And they paid me real well, by the way. So I said, yes, I'd like to do that, but I want to do a stairwell. So I did a stairwell with about 25 kids, That is, every semester I'd have some kids that were getting credit. But what I wasn't noticing is that they painted so different from me sometimes. So I'd have to retouch everything. But they had an experience, right? They get credit for that.
Right.
And
it probably felt good to work with these young people.
Yeah, it was a great feeling for me to work with university students. And among those, about 20, I'd say, 20 kids that worked all together. There was one Chicano artist named Frank Vargas, I think.
Garza? No.
Frank Garza? Maybe it was Frank Garza. Anyway, wonderful, wonderful painter, And he went on to paint large murals, and he painted a very large mural that he had on exhibit there at University of Northern Colorado. So I had the experience of trying to paint Dr. Candelaria's life beginning at the bottom of this, right in front of the stairwell, and going up to the second floor, and then moving to the right, and then back this way. So I got to do this guy. He turned out to be a Republican, but that's okay. In those days, I was beginning to think like that. Just this is a very divided country among some real conservative people and some more progressive people. Anyway, I found that out in the middle of the project, so I had never thought to ask his opinion on matters, right? I remember I showed him some sketches of himself and I think his wife, and then right over him is looming the figure of Don Quixote, right? Because he taught literature in Spanish. So I was sure that he loved the figure of Don Quixote, and I think I read somewhere that he identified very much with Don Quixote. So he really liked that idea. But I didn't start the project till about 2 years later. Meanwhile, he passed away. So, but I had some discussions with him, but we never talked about anything political or social, very little historical. He told me about his own life. He and his 2 brothers and 2 sisters had lived in Pagosa Springs, southern Colorado. Mm-hmm. And they owned some land. His mom and dad owned land. But the mom and dad died like within a year or maybe 2 years of from each other. And here's all those 5 kids that are left without parents, right? And so I don't understand why relatives didn't take them in, but somebody was trying to put the kids in a Catholic school, orphanage, whatever it was. But the price that was to be paid according to the priest was that the church would assume ownership of the land that they owned. So the family said no. So then the kids were taken to a Presbyterian school. Nowadays, it was called the same way, Demonel School for Boys.
Okay.
In Albuquerque, and the girls went to a girls' school in North Carolina. So, but the Presbyterian Church had the decency to put these kids in. They preserved their own title to the land, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so they went on, all of them, to become wonderful professors, teachers, just incredible family, right? And Dr. Candelaria was one of them. He might have been the younger one. But here in Denver, there's a church that we attended for a while, a Presbyterian church that had been established by Dr. Candelaria's brother, who became a Presbyterian minister. So it was a wonderful experience for me to deal with family and then to paint this wonderful man. So you see how this kind of work puts you in touch with so many wonderful people. And
it's an honor, don't you think, when you get to be a part of people's lives?
I know.
And you move people?
Right. You move them because you've been moved by these people, by their decency and hard work.
It's a reciprocal thing, right?
Right. Dr. Candelaria was in the First World War, and he was a messenger. He took messages along the trenches, right, back and forth. And that was a very dangerous job to have. He and a buddy used to do this, and one day his buddy didn't come back. So Dr. Candelaria, when he came back, was really traumatized. So he was in the hospital for a while in New Jersey, I think. But he finally came home, and his wife, and he raised 2 children, I think. His wife's name was Faye. Wonderful lady we met. Faye. I'll tell you a little story about her in a minute. But there are 2 stories, right? When we're painting his murals in the art department of UNC in Greeley, Mrs. Candelaria would come often. We got her a recliner chair, actually. So she would feel real welcome with the students and myself, just sitting there watching us paint. And one time somebody asked her, "Why don't you paint?" And so sure enough, she got a brush. And there's a picture of her. She's got a big white brush like that. She's painting something. So anyway, the students really loved to write. Sometimes she would take some of the kids to eat at her house, or myself. But on another occasion, I asked her, I don't know what his uniform looked like. You wouldn't have it, no copy. And she said, yes, I do. And so she went and got Dr. Candelaria's military uniform. I said, wow. And so there's a reporter there also at that time. So I've got the uniform so I can paint it on the mural, right? And I'm looking through the pockets, and I find a little notebook. Oh, wow. And I said, "Oh, look what I found, Faye." And she said, "What is it?" I said, "It's a little notebook with notes from Martin, right?" And she said, "Are there any girls' phone numbers there?" What a beauty lady she was. Another time she was a redhead growing up, right? So I'm trying to mix, and she's there also that day, sitting on her chair. And I said, "Faye, I can't get the color of your hair to paint here. Can you tell me? I'm mixing it here." So she comes and looks over my shoulder. "How about like that?" "No, not yet." "How about like that?" "No." And she said, "Wait a minute. Wait here." And she went to her house and came back with a long, flat little box, and she had braids of her hair. She said, "That's the color of my hair. It used to be."
That's crazy.
In the mural, you can see it nowadays, and you see Faye's hair. I got it right from her own hair.
Oh, right.
I didn't have to invent it.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, so we had those kinds of experience with the family, and I got to know the son and the daughter and their kids. So finally, it was dedicated, and after that, I got to do the airport murals.
Oh yeah, so I definitely want you to talk about these.
Well, what happened is that I submitted my slides in all my.
And just for our listeners, it's the Denver International Airport.
The Denver International Airport, DIA, they call it.
Yeah.
So I applied and left my materials there. Actually, when I went to leave my materials, it was the last day, the last hour to submit materials.
You're cutting it close, huh?
I couldn't find the damn office because it was at the old airport, right?
Oh.
And some of it had been abandoned or whatever, closed up, and I cannot find the office. And when I finally find it, it's 5:15, and the time was 8 to 5 that you could submit your information. And I got there at 5:15, finally, so nervous. And so there's a receptionist there. It's a black girl, and I says, "I'm so sorry, can I still leave it?" She said, "Yeah, just put it there." And so I was in the running, right? So and it was like a mail buggy, those mail buggies filled with proposals, not only from Denver, from around the country. And then they wouldn't call. So finally I called them, and they said, "Oh yeah, Leo, you got the commission." So again, I wanted to paint something meaningful for the community, right? And so I chose these walls, right? One's 28 foot wide, and then there's another one. There's a doorway, and then there's another wall 15 feet wide. So I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a condition that we want to overcome over here. And over here, I'm going to paint the solution, or people are trying to correct that condition. So, and there were two sets, right? On one wall, I designed the destruction of the environment. And then across from that doorway that I mentioned, there's the other wall where I tried to show the society or humanity coming to resolve the problem of the environment, trying to resolve or affect. On the other set of panels, on the smaller panel, I designed a war scene, right, where there's a group of kids towards the bottom left side of the mural. They're huddled against the cold with a blanket, but there's the buildings all around them are destroyed by war. Then there's a group of on the left side also of refugees streaming on behind the main scene. And so on top of all this is a general, looks like a Nazi, but it's not necessarily a Nazi. It could be an American general or British or whatever. And he's got his sword killing a little dove at the bottom of his feet. And on the other hand, he has a machine gun or a semi-automatic weapon. That's the war scene. And then on the larger section, on the larger part, which is the one I'm talking about, is the smaller mural. Then there's a doorway. Then there's a bigger wall. On the larger wall, I have humanity again represented by children in their native costumes from many countries. At the center of this larger mural, there are some kids beating their swords into plowshares, and the one that's doing the beating is a German kid with the lederhosen. Anyway, and then there's a Japanese and an American, all of this, and others beating the swords into plowshare. So we have like a plowshare that's being beaten into a sword. You can see the part of this plowshare, but to make sure people understood, I painted the whole plowshare out in front. Anyway, so we painted those murals. My daughter.
So I got a question. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but so did you submit that idea to them? Is that right? I
submitted that idea after I had gotten the commission.
Okay, so they gave you the commission first, then you came up with the idea, then you submitted it. Could there have been a point where they're like, yeah, this isn't what we want, or is it just like you have free reign?
I didn't see that at all.
Okay.
I think that the committee that chose all these pieces, because they only wanted one wall. My wife found out about later. They only asked me to do one mural. and I was talking on the phone to somebody just a few years ago, and I told that person, well, they only wanted one mural, but I decided to do 6. I only got to do 4. But my wife says, what?
Well, that's funny. I think it's interesting that that they gave you the freedom to do that, because I could see him having a war scene in a international airport could be controversial or
and was it controversial? Was there any?
Not initially. Okay. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But what happened is that they never once asked me to clarify anything. I think that's because I without feeling self-serving, I had already gotten a kind of reputation that I did social commentary, right?
Right.
And I had done the Denver Art Museum, the Candelata murals, and all those without any hassles. And you have to thank Denver for having that kind of an attitude, right?
Well, I mean, you're well respected in the community as a muralist.
I think so, yeah. And I've been real lucky for a lot of that. But in any case, so my daughter, Leticia, helped me paint that in large parts of those murals, or her paintings, right? Because I couldn't keep up with her and the other young lady named Cheryl Detweiler. I couldn't keep up with them sometimes because they painted real comfortably. They didn't just painting. And me, I had to concentrate on everything I did. And still, right, I have to be careful with my brush strokes. So anyway, those two helped me. And a couple of volunteers also came. And like this lady came and painted just 2-3 mushrooms. Okay. Another person would come over here and did a couple of wolf cubs. And that's the way it went, right? We had a lot of people participate. And I never heard from them again, right? They just participated. They had a lot of great fun. And then we never saw them again. But I know that they really just liked what we were doing. Another thing we had all the time was Mexican music, right? Because I like to hear music when I'm painting. And so I always had Mexican music playing. And the airport wasn't open yet, right? So there's a lot of workers all over the place. And the Latino workers would hear the music and they would be drawn to us, right? So I would tell them, where are you from? And they say, El Salvador or someplace. And I said, do you like that music? Yeah, they liked it a lot. Or if they were from Mexico especially, they knew what the music was, right? So we had a wonderful rapport with the workers there. One time, I saw this group of people coming kind of in a hurry, right? And they're led by this young man, say in his 20s. And he came and said, where's the Italian? Because there's all kinds of nationalities depicted in the mural. And I don't know if he thought I wouldn't have an Italian there. I said, right there. I answered him right away, right? Because he caught me by surprise almost, but I was in front of the mural. So I told him, that's it right there. And he says, Nápoles. The costume that he was wearing is from Naples.
Right.
He recognizes it immediately.
Right. Another time, a man came and we were painting on the mural, and he says, where's the goddamn Polak? I said, well, sir, There he is. I just happened to have had a Polish boy in his native costume. So he was real pleased, right? But if he had come and asked me, where is he? Bulgarian, I would not have had
You
anybody.
might have been stuck.
But then we had the Scottish example. Oh my God, this is a story. So I'm painting the Scottish boy. I couldn't use the skirts.
The kilts?
The kilt, right? I couldn't have any particular clan because I knew that would mean trouble, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I did the national band, and that's the clan outfit that boy has, doing a jig, right? So nobody could attack me for that. But then the buckle had to be, or I had to use somebody's clan image. And so I did the Campbell's, which is a boar's head. And then somebody came and said, I see you painted the Campbell's. I see you painted the Campbell's. And he said, well, I belong to the McGregor clan. Shit.
You can't win, can you?
So he said, you can paint the McGregor clan. And so I did. I found a spot. I forget where. And then what else happened? Anyway, finally, this man with a real neat mustache, real tall guy with an accent, Scottish accent, right? And he said, I see you painted those traitors. Oh my God. What have I gotten myself into? And he said, everybody knows the most important clan in Scotland or the MacDonalds.
Wow.
I didn't know. Anyway, so he said, I can bring you, and he did bring me books, ancient books, it seemed, where he could prove the McDonald's. It's so funny. So I painted the McDonald's crest. But I thought, that's it. No more. And then after that, somebody else came, and I forget what clan he belonged to. But he wanted me to paint his clan. I said, no, that's it. So that's what happened with that particular jig that little man is doing. Anyway, so many things happen, you see, just in the process of doing something. There was this man standing in front of the mirror looking up at this wooded area. And he said, why do you paint that little ogre there? I said, oh, no, it's just maybe the brush strokes, but it's no ogre there, He said, yes, there is. And he showed me, I couldn't see it, Right. I said, I'm so sorry, I can't see it. And he said, well, there is. I said, well, maybe I'll get a ladder. So somebody brought me a ladder. It had to be a tall ladder, by the way. And sure enough, there's a little guy with two little suitcases in the middle of all these trees, these aspen trees. I couldn't see it. My daughter and Cheryl had done that just to see how long it would take me to find it. I wasn't looking for it. So they had a big laugh about that. And then they did another thing on this African girl's outfit on one of the other murals on the environment. They painted this image of myself because when I used to write to my daughter and my granddaughter when I was out of town, I'd always have a comical figure of myself like this, right? They painted that on the outfit of this girl, of this African outfit, and I never have been able to find it.
Oh, is that right?
But other people tell me they found it. Anyway, so that went on with those airport murals, and we had a dedication when her dad was here. It was a very moving time, right? So when we're having the dedication, this boy runs up and kicks the mural, and he's got rubber soles and leaves a little streak. So my father-in-law was mad about that. But anyway, I think he was proud of me. So
yeah.
Anyway, so we went on, had another dedication for the other set of murals, and that was done. But later on, as you might have read, some conspiracy theories developed among some people, saying that the murals were satanic, that they were evil, and all kinds of other stuff. I don't know how in the world they got away with it, but they did.
And then they're convincing other people.
Right.
And people are buying into it.
So silly. So I was talking to some folks at the airport just about 5 years ago, I think it was. I was visiting the airport. By the way, when my wife and I visit the airport, we always go look at the murals. And this one time, and my wife goes up and tells people, my husband did that. You want him to tell you about it? So, okay, what can I do, So I'm explaining the mural. But I forgot what I was going to say. In any case, they developed all these awful theories, right? So, I know. What I was going to say is that I was talking to some folks in front of the mural while a couple of those conspiracy theorists came by, and I don't know what they were talking. I didn't understand. But I said to them, I can explain it to you in Spanish if you like, because they look Latino, right? And the guy said, I don't speak Spanish, right? Okay. So anyway, they were saying something bad about the mural. I couldn't get it because I was talking to people here. And another time, somebody was looking up real close, taking a picture of it. And I said, can I just, what are you doing? Can I help you, or can I explain it? And she said, no. And she walked away. So I don't know what she was looking for in the mural. But anyway, so that developed later. And I think those postings are still on the internet that people can still read.
And for the listeners, I think if you, we'll have a link to Leo's website, but if you look at this mural, you will see all the different symbolism and everything that to misconstrue that, I find that really difficult that people read into that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember. What did I do after that?
Actually, Leo, can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. I was having a conversation with a couple the other day, one who is an artist, and they were saying that, especially in this political climate that we're in at the moment, mm-hmm. that her comment was that artists are really not doing their job, that they're not doing the things that you have done your entire career as far as making a statement, mm-hmm. whether it be social, political, whatever, that they've kind of dropped the ball. What do you think about that? Do you think that, there's always artists that are out there doing that and mm-hmm. kind of pushing the envelope, but do you think as a collective, as a whole, that artists are doing what they should, or enough? Let's put it that way.
I think they're doing a lot of personal, even social things in their artwork, even large easel works. But I think what gets the public's attention more is murals, especially if you take the time to be with the mural and either invite people in or even entice them to the mural. But a lot of people cannot do that. It's so hard to live without an income, right? And it's so difficult for anybody. That not everybody's lucky like me, where my wife has helped me. I did, many times I did get paid, but other times I didn't. But in any case, for the artist to be able to do large, ambitious works, he needs to have some kind of funding. But the other thing that the artists need is to have among themselves dialogue as to what they could be doing, right, in a situation where we are in right now, especially with Trump being out there and wars and immigrants, all kinds of things going on, that the artist cannot do very much but paint his little easel works or do his drama or plays. But it's hard if they don't get organized, if they don't come together to examine the issues that are happening and to address the issues with the talents that they have, with the instrument that they have, which are their brushes and their paints, right? And so I would say to that person that if I could give my life as a little bit of an example, if I could do it without any education initially, with a lot of obstacles that have come up, then they can do it. I think so, because, to be a farm worker and to let that influence me, to always be able to look back where I'm from, right? To be able to look and to admire the people that I've met along the way and let them influence me or inspire me to look where we've been. Those young artists today, I noticed when we were out there where they're doing all those murals. What's the name of the place? Anyway, there's a street and an alley that's being done by graffiti artists all over the place.
In Rhino.
In Rhino district. And so I spoke to some of those kids, and I said, wouldn't you like to meet with other artists and talk about things, especially with people like myself and other older artists? And they were so interested in doing that. And I feel bad that I know what happened. I got injured, right? But I wanted to get a lot of those kids together and show them slides of what other people have done, what I've done, and try and inspire them to do those kind of subject matter, to look at what's going on in society, how people are getting their minds twisted by our way of life really today, and to inspire them somehow, just to get them to talk and tell us, well, first of all, to tell us what they mean with all this graffiti work that they do. To some of us, it may not be very meaningful, right, because we can't understand it, but what they meant to say is what we could listen to, to have them also examine each other of all those young artists, to see what he means when he paints this, to see what he means over here, or to see what some of us tried to do, and try to inspire them that way. I don't quite have to answer your question.
No, I think that was a great answer. I think in this day and age where things move so fast, I see it in the medium that I work in, but I think people forget. They don't know the history, the evolution sometimes, or they don't think about it.
Right.
And without having that, it's not like you have to always reach back into the past, but you need to know, I think, to be, what's the word I want to use? To say something new and different, you have to know where it all came from. You need to know that you have to acknowledge that legacy of the ones that came before you to create something and to inspire and to make a statement. Right. And sometimes I think that gets lost in the shuffle somehow in this day and age, where people don't take the time to think about the people that came before them.
Yeah, and there's so much to admire. For example, Caitlin, the artist that painted Native Americans. Imagine a young guy going out in the 1830s, I think it was, to roam around the different tribes, to paint people. I mean, we saw an exhibit of his work in Washington. I think it was hundreds of paintings this guy did, roaming around with I don't know if he had any sponsors, but I'm sure he did. But he was out there, doing something about what needed to be seen. That was the native peoples, and they were diminishing in numbers. The other one is Audubon. This guy also in his early 30s, I think it was, painting some of the creatures that are not now extinct. Can you imagine? And roaming around, like doing his art, even if there was nobody watching. He was watching the animals that he was painting and learning from them and recording for us, like the passenger pigeon, right?
Right.
Or the Carolina parakeet, the ivory-billed woodpecker, and there's a duck, I forgot, I don't know, remember. But to record this, whether anybody's watching you paint, right, you're going to take it to them and show them this historical material, right? The Native Americans, the Audubon paintings, and I'm sure there's others, in the 1930s and 40s. Of course, they were the most socialist-oriented guys. In the WPA period also, a lot of artists, including some Hispano artists, did wonderful work.
Yeah, and they were actually getting paid to do it. I mean, they were hired to do that.
That's right.
Because, there wasn't work out there. So the government came up with a program to help these artists,
during the Depression, after the Depression.
And now we're seeing, I'm sorry, Todd, but now we're seeing like the decline where they're talking about cutting funding for the National Endowment of the Arts. Yeah. And even in Rapid City, they've had some cutting of art budgets on a city level, and it makes you kind of concerned, because art is a representation of our civilization. That's art right. And music and that's what, when you're looking at like prehistoric man, mm-hmm. it's the art that we see. It's not anything else. It's the art. Deep in the caves and all that.
Right. I've told kids that some of those cave paintings were done deep in the caves.
Right.
Where you might get lost if you're not real familiar or if you don't have a torch with you. But that's what those painters were doing. I tell them during the Second World War, around that time, it was a habit of GIs to write on the wall. Gilroy was here.
Right.
And those cavemen might have been trying to say that I was here.
Right. I
was hunting or trying to hunt and survive in this hostile environment. So there's so much to retell, so much that is not being told, especially nowadays. These kids might feel alone out there.
And I think that's a really good point. You just kind of reiterated it once again, is that we live in this age where we're all connected with technology, supposedly, and we have this great way of communicating. But in essence, we've lost a lot of that. Right. I think people are working in their own little microcosm, and they're not getting together. Well, with other artists and interacting like this and having engaging conversation. I know it happens, but I don't think it happens as much as it did in the past, where people were inspiring each other and pushing each other to do significant work.
Right. And I think the real crux of the problem is we're really self-absorbed. We're concerned about us, ourselves. We're not concerned about community. Right. I mean, the one thing that since Todd and I started this project of talking to artists, we've talked to now how many muralists? Like 3. I mean, Jerry and Jay Jaramillo and Stevan Lazaro, and now you, number 4. And the impact of what murals do for the community. I mean, the fact that the community came to you while you were painting that, you were speaking directly to them. Right. You're representing their space, their time, their struggle, everything about them. I mean, this kind of work is so important.
Right. Well, you know, a lot of these artists, if they only, if they thought, or if they gave themselves a chance to look inwardly, their families, their experiences, schools, all kinds of experiences that one person has had, right? And look for subject matter in there. And if you go further than that, look at the community, look at your other artist friends or co-friends, and you'll find so much material that needs to be told. That kid doing that graffiti over there, if he looked more closely at himself, even at his family. Let's say the family was messed up in some ways. Try and see how people are struggling to find like dignity for themselves or a place for themselves, importance for themselves. And they'll discover so much like I have. And like other artists like myself have. Like black artists also. For example, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, William Walker in Chicago in the early 1970s, the Wall of Respect, the Wall of Understanding. These were big murals in the ghetto, right? In Philadelphia, we saw like community leaders painted like a 2-story big murals with this black community leader there, right there. Another big old mural about Paul Robeson, a great African-American civil rights leader before Martin Luther King, and others. I mean, to think that the people that you are around have importance, right? And some of those maybe not more important than you, but somehow have been given the opportunity to be leaders, right? That instead of seeking like a greater reward for yourself, do community work and keep on in this fashion, just inspiring others. Look at those folks for inspiration. With Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, so many others, but then some that are not known, right? That you can only see in the community, right? Next door to my house in Beeville, Texas, there was a man that had a wagon and a mule, right? and people called him Don Jose el Raspero, Mr. Jose and the scraper, or the scraper of ice to make ice cones. So he would go in his wagon around the neighborhoods selling ice cream.
Snow cones.
Snow cones, but he didn't have any cones. You had to bring your own little cup, right? And so they called him Don Jose el Raspero and his little mule. So I've done some writing, and in one of those writings I write about Don Jose. And anyway, he had the blocks of ice, and he would scrape them and then cover them up, and he'd have his syrup, bottles of syrup, that he. I should paint that Don Jose. But anyway, I wrote about him. I did 2 chapters on him. One of them is my little brother becomes his assistant one day. He's nice to take him along, right? But my little brother is a menace. There are some some elderly women in the community. Don Jose is a widower. So there's these old ladies in the community that want to get close to him, right? They all like him. So my little brother thinks that's a big scandal, right? So it all turns into a farce, you know. So my little brother's intervening, trying to save Don Jose from these awful women. It's so funny. There's so much to his life. Do you think that talked enough?
I think I have just a couple more questions, and then we can...
But I need to tell you one last thing.
Okay, absolutely.
That mural this has disappeared. It cannot be found. All I have is the central piece that you see there, but the wings themselves that you see there going to the sides were in storage in the school. The school took the murals out of the panels out of the school and put them in this building that they later sold. The building was demolished.
No.
With the murals inside, we think. Because we've talked to the superintendent, assistant superintendent, teachers, and so on, and nobody knows what happened to it.
Wow.
But that's
a shame.
And that's one of the cruxes for a muralist, right? That things change, people don't see the significance or appreciate the work for whatever reason, and then they either get taken down or painted over or destroyed.
Yeah.
It's got to be disheartening when you've spent so much time and effort and a mural that's, had such significance in the community, and it goes away.
I just remember one thing. I could remember so many things, but one thing, let me tell you. We had this mural on exhibit at the Museum of Fine Arts in Santa Fe, right? And I'm still working on it, right, in public. So this young guy came after seeing the mural, talking to me a while. He said, "Could you paint my grandpa in there?" I said, "Sure." And he said, "My grandpa was in the Bataan Death March." Yikes. And so his face is in that mural, right? In his Second World War uniform. So I've just been so lucky to have people come up and tell me, "Can you paint my grandpa?"
Right.
That's pretty powerful to have people approach you and go, "Wow, I love what you're doing. And can you incorporate something of me or somebody that I know into this mural?"
I had painted another guy who was a custodian at the school where I was working on the mural once. And I had painted him as the community, right? And this guy says, "If you sell this mural, you have to give me some money because I'm in it."
Was he serious or was he joking?
No, he was serious. Yeah.
I thought you were going to tell me that he came up and he was like, "No, Mr. Tanguma, I'm so honored that you incorporated my image into this mural." And here he's trying to hustle you for some money.
Just like that. If you sell this, you have to give me some of the money because I'm in it. So
once it's cut.
See, this could go on and on. I could tell you guys so many things.
Well, the stories you've been telling us have been incredible.
You have such wonderful, amazing stories.
Thank you.
Now, you're not only a muralist, you have these phenomenal, for our listeners, and we'll list Leo's website at the end here, but he has his writings up there. And if you explore the website, you can click on the murals, and a lot of them have the description. So you'll get some of the historical background, even some of the, on some of the ones that we didn't get a chance to discuss this time around, you can read about them. You also do smaller pieces as well. And so
I've done some, yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that. You're not only a muralist, you also are a painter of other sizes and do other art.
Right. Well, when you paint on a larger scale, it's difficult sometimes to get adjusted to doing smaller scale, right? I have had so much trouble with the Les Miserables there, and I'm still struggling for it. I don't want to get back there. But anyway, I do some, like I've got Zapata over there. I've got that comical kid. By the way, I didn't know if you realized who that is.
No,
I didn't.
It's me.
Is that you?
I'm just kidding. That's a self-portrait when I was 5 or 4. No, I'm
so
kidding.
it looks like it's a baby with a diaper and wearing a big old cowboy hat
and a cigar.
And a cigar?
Right.
Yeah. And what's he saying?
¿Quién quiere tirar chingazos? No, who wants to throw blows?
It's a great.
But anyway, to do smaller pieces, it's important to me, especially I think in the future it's going to be more important than it has been, because now I'm not able to do big pieces. So I have to be doing smaller ones. But I've done some smaller ones that I'm proud of, but it's hard to remember.
What about the Sand Creek Massacre that's currently at the McNichols building with the Chicano art show?
Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Well, that one is, I have the portrait of a large portrait of a Native American man, and he's looking at you with a kind of hateful stare. Somebody might call it hateful, but in any case, real angry, let's say angry stare looking at you. In the background are these teepees that are all burning, and there's people being chased by soldiers on horseback, and there's at the very front bottom, right next to the young angry man, there's some more killings going on of Native Americans by American soldiers. But in front of the young angry man, there's like a paper doll outfit with the American colors, with flaps, that this suit is going to be put on him, right? And so I tell people, I've seen paintings by American artists depicting Native Americans wrapped in the American flag, like real proud. And I don't see that as being true, to what Native Americans might feel. It's just, I feel that that's not true, that somebody has to accept this situation and be proud of it, right? Somehow that it didn't touch you, or you think it didn't touch your family or something. But anyway, so that's what that is. A Native American with a suit of the American colors about to go on him, and he's not happy about that. We met an artist in Phoenix. Remember that young mural painter? Some people are more progressive than others, because this kid at this young man painted murals all along a museum, okay? The Fine Arts Museum, of the struggle of Native American peoples, including the murder and the killings. Wow, when we walked in there, wow, who did this? It's a young artist, and then we sent him an email, didn't we? Or just to say we saw your work and we congratulate you. But there are people like that, right? That tell it, I guess you could say, like we used to say in the old days, like it is. Tell it like it is. Actually, that came out of the Black community, I think. Tell it like it is. So there's so much to say about the human experience. I remember when I first went to Texas Southern, I had gone to the University of Houston to get financial aid. I had taken one summer a course, but I couldn't afford to go anymore, so I went to seek financial aid. And the lady told me, we don't have any more financial aid. You can go to Texas Southern. It's an African-American school. I said, okay. So I went over there. I got financial aid. And then I went to my first lecture by Dr. John Biggers. I still remember some of the words. He said, the human experience is the most fantastic thing you can imagine, telling this to young African-American students and myself. So somehow I was attracted to Dr. Biggers. So I was just so glad to have such a person guide me a little bit. When I was working on this mural on Canal Street, he'd come visit sometimes, and he'd criticize me and tell me, what I was doing and what I should do. And then he'd say, okay, let's go eat somewhere, Mexican food. Huh. See, he came from 3rd Ward with the University Texas Southern East to 2nd Ward where I was, and there's a lot of Mexican restaurants all down the street, right? So he'd like to go eat Mexican food. And he always liked to drink a beer with his food, right? I never did like that. I used to be able to drink beers before food, but not while I'm eating. I would always have a pop or something. But he'd always have a beer, and then he would order a nice plate. So many memories.
And he was a muralist too, right?
Yeah, he was a professor, but he was also a muralist.
African American?
Right. Yeah. So if you look at different buildings at Texas Southern, you'll find murals by Dr. Biggers. And also he had some at the waterfront in Denver, in Houston. So just all these folks have been a great inspiration for me. Yeah. Great inspiration.
These smaller works that you've done and that you currently are working on, do you have people that collect your work, or do you sell to people that are interested in buying your work?
I've sold very few all my life, very few. But I don't think about that very much. I want to do murals, but I know that I can't anymore. So I don't know. I can't be an intellectual. Sometimes I worry people want me to be more intellectual.
I think you're incredibly intellectual. So
that's all I know, what I've told you.
This has been an incredible education. Like my brain is, it's been an incredible journey with you this afternoon.
Thank you.
I think on that note, we'll wrap this up. If people want to see your work or they want to possibly look at a smaller piece or purchase anything, or just contact and talk to you,
or commission,
maybe somebody wants to
commission you for a big mural.
Yeah, commission you on even just a smaller piece,
right?
Or just get in touch with you because they're interested and they'd appreciate talking with you and being mentored. Right. How would they go about like seeing your work and contacting you?
Well, they could contact me through your email.
Through tangumaj@q.com.
Okay.
tangumaj@q.com.
And we'll put a link on our Facebook page and stuff. So if that's all right with you guys.
Sure.
Yeah. And your website is?
Leo Tanguma, Chicano Muralist.com.
Okay.
Well, I said it at the beginning of this podcast, and I'll say it again. This has been an absolute honor and privilege to sit down with you this afternoon. And I really appreciate your willingness to do this and spend the quality time that we got to this afternoon. And on that note, Mr. Tanguma, thank you very much. And to your wife, Jean, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you both so much.